My name is Andrew, and I am your officiator here, and we're live streaming from Pompano Beach, our new church. It's so good to be here and glad that you're with us. This service is an auspicious event, as this is our 8th anniversary for having services here at the church, our first being in 2013 in Hollywood. Now we're here at this great facility in Pompano Beach. If this is your first time joining us at Perpetual Life, I'd like to invite you to join our email list so that you can get updates on all that is going on in the super longevity communities so that you may live a healthier and longer life. And you can do that joining our email address simply at the website. Go in there at the website www.perpetual.life and send me a message. I understand that there are people all over the world that are creating watch parties all over the country, all over the world, and we welcome you to do this in your community as well, where you can get a group of people, have a little bit of food, break bread, maybe a potluck or meet at a restaurant, and you can join us either live or watch our recorded events when it is convenient in your time zone. Next month, we will have 2 virtual events for you. Our annual Remembrance of the Resurrectables will be on Thursday, December the 16th, and we'll start as we did tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 10 p.m. Universal Time, and then another event where we are joining with immortalists around the world at the Super Longevity Holiday Party, and we'll have a note here. So you're welcome to come to this party as well. That's Saturday, December 18th at the same time, 6 p.m., which is 10 o'clock Universal Time. Our creed, we believe that all life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our gospel, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. And we follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, in our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. And this video is a new movie that's coming out on Life Extension. It's Longevity Hackers. Before we show this trailer, I'd like to point out that many of the people that are shown in this clip, perhaps most of them, have attended and spoken here at the Church of Perpetual Life. And we are looking forward to having a movie night in the future here at Perpetual Life using this movie as our theme movie, as our movie. So it's the Longevity Hackers. Let's show the clip.
Biggest issue that all of us are facing together is the disease of aging and the finality of death.
People for thousands of years have been touting cure aging products that don't really work.
People have to understand several things. Number one, the science is real.
Age Reversal X Prize is a global technological competition, $100 million for developing solution to reverse aging.
All humans die, and most people accept it as a given, but more and more people are beginning to learn that it's not necessarily something that can't be changed.
We're not just talking about slowing aging, we're actually about turning back the clock.
Things are going to be exponential.
A good diet and exercise will help you avoid a lot of disease, but it's truly not enough.
If FDA will recognize aging as disease, it's going to be a massive inflection point for all of us.
Metformin's major side effect is living long. People who are aging don't have the patience to wait 10 years for a drug approval.
I'm very excited. I think that aging can be cured a lot faster than most people are projecting.
The prospect of living up to 200 years is really nothing.
And what we're seeing there is that people's dogs are going from old dogs to puppies again.
In order to be able to treat diseases of aging, we have to understand the cause.
You can't really stop aging per se, but we can significantly decelerate the process.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw reversal of aging in every way imaginable.
Now we're treating the lifespan itself as somehow unnatural, as something that needs to be fixed. Treating aging as a disease takes us in some directions that we should think carefully about and we should worry about.
I will be able to live as long as I choose to live.
I do believe that we are now in control of our own evolution.
Looks to me like a spectacular event, and we're certainly looking forward to debuting this movie at Perpetual Life here next year sometime. As you know, the RAADfest was last month, and at the RAAD Festival, we had many amazing presentations. And you can sign up still to see these great recordings. They're all recorded. Just go to the RAADfest.com. That's RAAD Fest, F-E-S-T.com. And you can watch what happened. You can watch the recordings at the RAAD Festival just last month. Our mission here at Perpetual Life is to assist all people in the radical extension of healthy human life. We provide fellowship for longevity enthusiasts, and at our regular services, we invite guest speakers to teach scientific rationality along with the Creator's plan that humanity evolved to achieve markedly extended, healthy lifespans. As you know, we follow the prophet Nikolai Fedorov, his philosophy of the common task for humanity. Fedorov believed, as we do here, that we should divert human energies away from wars and dissensions toward measures for protecting mankind against natural disasters like floods and droughts and earthquakes and hurricanes, and especially aging, and to transform nature from a temporary enemy into an eternal friend, and therefore have an extended lifespan. Here, the Church of Perpetual Life, we are a science and faith-based transhumanist church. Our faith is in the Creator and in humanity to find ways toward healthy, unlimited lifespans. At this time, our services are all virtual, and we'll let you know when we start meeting in person again. And once we do, we will still have these wonderful Zoom parties incorporated with our in-person events. So if you're in Australia or England and Russia, if you're far, far away from here, you can still join us virtually, and this will continue with our virtual live streams and Zoom parties. I'd like to now introduce our speaker. Our speaker tonight is the founder of this church and one of the founders of the RAADfest, as well as a number of other organizations that promote unlimited lifespans. Bill is a cornerstone of the worldwide super longevity movement. Bill Faloon has made hundreds of media appearances, including guest spots on The Phil Donahue Show, Tony Brown's Journal, ABC News Day 1, Motherboard Vice, and has been interviewed by Newsweek and dozens, if not hundreds, of other magazines and newspapers and prominent online blogs and other news sources. Let's welcome Mr. Bill Faloon with his presentation entitled Transitioning Towards Immortality. Transitioning Towards Immortality, Bill Faloon.
Neal, thank you very much for those kind words of introduction. What I did is record this presentation because RAADfest was an online event, and it's about 58 minutes long, and it reviews what happened from RAADfest 2020 to 2021. It reviewed essentially a 12-month span, and what you're going to see is an amazing amount of technology that is either initiated or progressed over a 12-month period. And what's happening more and more is we're seeing the acceleration of technology advancing much faster than what we did even 3 to 5 years ago. And that means that we are on the road to immortality. We need to hang around long enough to avail ourselves to that amazing innovation that is occurring in the biomedical sciences and, well, in the sciences of transhumanism. That is now being aggressively pursued. So what you're going to see over the next 58 minutes is essentially a summary. I could have given a 1-hour lecture about almost each one of these advances, but I try to summarize each one into a few minutes just so people could get an idea of the many options they have today to potentially intervene and the amount of research that's going on right now. Right now, research going on to figure out a way to keep us from dying. So whenever you're ready, Neal, please put on the video, and then afterwards, I'll be ready to answer any questions you have about what was presented during the 58 minutes. If I can elaborate any more, I'll be happy to do that for the group.
Thank you for those kind words of introduction. I'm going to open up this prospect of human age reversal talk by letting the group know that the entire presentation, all the PowerPoints and hyperlinks are available at the agereversal.net website. And it gives you a chance to sit back and relax and not worry about scribbling down some information when you see something of interest, because the hyperlinks and the slides will all be on the agereversal.net website. I'm going to talk today about research findings since last year's RAADfest, and there's been a lot of them, including what people can do right now to live 5 more years. I'm going to talk about a study that we're funding in which we're going to seek to repopulate bone marrow from old people with autologous-induced hematopoietic stem cells to reverse immune senescence, and some transhumanist advances that have occurred over the last few months. Now, our controversial contention is that it may be possible to reverse aging in people today. And we say this based on a lot of evidence, including dozens of studies on parabiosis research, where they circulate young blood into old animals on a continuous basis, and the old animals grow biologically younger. This research has been replicated many, many times, starting from the 1950s all the way up until recent times. This motivated me to do my own study. I wanted to see, does this really extend lifespan or quality of life? And the good news is we took a group of rats, about 60 human equivalent years, and we gave them intraperitoneal injections of young rat plasma every 2 weeks. And guess what? The rats receiving the young plasma every 2 weeks lived longer, but more impressively, their quality of life was much longer. So the young plasma group, you can see with the solid black dots, and they lived longer and they lived healthier compared to the control group not receiving the young plasma. And sometimes, well, the picture really tells the story. And here you see the control group not receiving young plasma on the left. It's looking older. Its coat has lost its nice white color. It's heavier. And then the young plasma treated rat, and again, starting these at 60 human equivalent years, it looks younger and it behaved younger. Here's another picture where we have 3 of the treated rats. They look younger, and then the one without the young plasma, it looked older and it behaved older in the cage. So quality of life is a big thing. Again, another picture. On each side are young plasma treated rats. In the middle, one that didn't get the young plasma, it didn't live as long, and its quality of life was significantly reduced. One more picture, again, 2 of the treated rats on each side, the control rat in the middle, just looking older and not living as long. So here's an expanded description of this study. We intraperitoneally injected the young rat plasma into 60-year-old human equivalent rats, and we saw an extension of lifespan. Now, a human equivalent estimate of how much longer? Well, a 70-year-old human getting this treatment might live to be 77 as opposed to the control group. Very hard, though, to translate rat findings into human findings, but at least we saw survival improvements, but most impressively, a transient improvement in quality of life. And this is just a summary from the scientists who did this. This is, by the way, pre-publication research. It won't get published for a couple months. You're seeing it now as you're attending RAADfest. But young plasma seems to possess these revitalizing factors that can improve quality of life and moderately extend their lifespan also. Now, this validates a lot of work that's been done, or I should use the word corroborates. We're corroborating what's been done in dozens of other studies, including one I reported on last year at RAADfest, in which young plasma fractions more than cut in half the epigenetic age of a group of mice. And this is moving forward into a potential new drug that could enable people to grow biologically younger, maybe cut their epigenetic age in half, which would be incredible if that happened. So the big question is, what do we do now to transition these young plasma benefits into old humans? Remember, we can't continuously circulate young plasma into our bodies. It's rather inconvenient to go in every couple of weeks to get young plasma infusions, and it's not going to work as well as if we had the ability to produce young plasma in our bone marrow. And this is where most of our youth emanates from. In youth, our bone marrow produces huge numbers of mesenchymal and hematopoietic stem cells. It's releasing these stem cells into our blood 24/7. Around the clock, we're literally, when it comes to hematopoietic stem cells, 1,000 billion cells a day are produced and released. Immune cells, red blood cells, platelets. We grow older, unfortunately, and it declines. Our stem cell function and stem cell numbers, they decline. And unfortunately, this is a problem with aging, and we're seeking to address that. But it's important to understand that the natural way of staying young is to maintain healthy bone marrow. And the incredible news is transcription factors are able to reprogram old cells into induced pluripotent stem cells that can theoretically regenerate our tissues forever. I'm going to talk a lot about transcription factors throughout this presentation. Just to give a short definition, these are proteins that turn on and off gene expression. Under favorable conditions, the transcription factors are controlling our genes, so we have pro-youth expression of our gene patterns, as opposed to, unfortunately, the activation of the pro-aging factors. So transcription factors, very important element of what we're seeking to explain. And the Nobel Prize 2012 was awarded to two scientists who were able to identify 4 transcription factors that converted old somatic cells into pluripotent stem cells that can propagate indefinitely. They won the Nobel Prize for this work, and those 4 transcription factors are collectively called Yamanaka factors. And we're going to use this technology, we hope, in vivo to enable older people to grow biologically younger. But as it relates to our stem cells, most people think about the mesenchymal stem cells, very important for tissue maintenance and repair. But our hematopoietic stem cells, well, this is what's needed to produce our immune cells, our red blood cells, our platelets. And when we lose our hematopoietic stem cell production capability, we die. It's needed to sustain life. So we're focusing in on research right now, and the good news is in vivo. A study was done, published in 2017, showing if you take out old hematopoietic cells and then reprogram them using transcription factors to turn back on youthful gene expression patterns, guess what? You're able then to restore those old hematopoietic cells back into younger ones. They were able to transplant these back into old animals who then started to produce lots and lots of red blood cells, immune cells, platelets. They were able to prove in vivo this can work. This is a slide from this study showing how they did this. But what we want to do is translate this into the human model. And what I did last year is commissioned a review article with some prestigious scientists to evaluate all of the studies that have ever been done looking at cellular reprogramming using transcription factors to turn on beneficial genes and silence the ones that cause us to age prematurely. One of the studies showed that a 6 transcription factor cocktail was able to completely reverse the degenerative changes in old cells and fully rejuvenate these cells into youthful functionality. This stimulated interest in the scientific community. That was the purpose of funding this review, where it got published in a major journal, and people around the world could see we're on the verge of making a major breakthrough in vivo. Here's a little diagram of how we intend to induce aging reversal in people, elderly people who are not very healthy to begin with. What we're going to do is a skin punch of their somatic cells. We're going to remove these fibroblast cells from their skin, put them into a petri dish where they'll be dividing, and then we're going to add in these cellular reprogramming factors, the Yamanaka factors, plus 2 additional ones, 6-factor regenerative cocktail that will produce autologous induced pluripotent stem cells. And the good news about this is that these autologous cells are genetically similar or identical to the donor, that the elderly person who donated their old cells, we get their genetic profile, and then we reprogram those old cells into genetically identical induced pluripotent stem cells that we differentiate into tissue-specific stem cells that are then transplanted after purification back into the older recipient with the objective of inducing systemic age reversal. We feel by transplanting these induced autologous stem cells into the bone marrow, we're talking about hematopoietic and mesenchymal stem cells, we may be able to induce systemic biological age reversal. And here's how we intend to do it. Step one, we want to remove senescent cells from the bone marrow, get those out of the way, and then replace them with those induced autologous pluripotent hematopoietic stem cells to rebuild immunity, and also use the transcription factors to make mesenchymal stem cells to induce systemic regeneration of all the tissues outside the bone marrow. And to give you an example of how well this can work, this is something I showed at RAADfest 2 years ago, and these were old mice that had young bone marrow transplants. And you look at the young mouse microglial cell on the left, its branches extend like a healthy tree. And unfortunately, when that mouse grows older, those branches shrivel. It becomes dysfunctional. And you take an old mouse and put in old bone marrow, nothing happens. You take an old mouse and transplant young bone marrow into that old mouse, its microglial cells, synaptic branches extend again. They extend again and they regain functionality. So the brains of these mice are functioning better and their activity levels are improved. You look at the young mouse box on the upper left-hand box, it's gray, and you see the mice running around a cage, really healthy. But the older ones, of course, they're slowed down, just like old people. But you transplant young bone marrow into old mice, and they start running around a cage and behaving like young mice again. Now, we can't transplant young bone marrow into old people because of graft versus host. And that's why we have a different plan in order to use induced autologous pluripotent stem cells to accomplish the same objective. And there's lots of data substantiating that this can induce a regenerative effect. The study published in 2020 showed significant reductions in mortality with very simple procedures compared to what we plan to do. And this study, published in May 2021, showed that progeroid mice, if you just put in transcription factors in vivo, you increase their lifespan and improve structures throughout their body, improve maximum lifespan in certain groups. So the evidence continues to accumulate that using transcription factors and reprogram genes in our cells to start expressing themselves in more youthful mannerisms. This group is doing something really unique. You send them your mesenchymal stem cells and they differentiate them into tissue-specific progenitor cells to regenerate maybe a kidney, a liver, a heart that's not functioning so well in your body. This group is doing work with autologous stem cell therapy to treat people with hematological malignancies such as leukemia, multiple myeloma. So we have research going on across the board, but it's not focused enough on aging. And that's why we plan to do a study in which we will take fibroblasts, skin punch drawn fibroblasts, replicate those cells, and then reprogram those cells into autologous pluripotent stem cells, repopulate the bone marrow niche with both hematopoietic and mesenchymal stem cells. Remember, these autologous, so the genetic profile is identical or at least similar, and then put those back into that older person to reverse immune senescence and rejuvenate their tissues. So our schematic chart here of what we plan to do to reverse aging. We hope lots of scientists out there see what we're seeking to do and copy us. I only have a few scientific groups that I'm funding right now, but there's hundreds out there that can do this exact same research and perfect it so we can start making older people potentially grow younger very, very soon. Now, I woke up to Apple hijacking my cell phone one Sunday morning with something I couldn't get off, and they were talking about science curing death. And I'm just going to play a few seconds of what they were talking about because they apparently knew I was interested in this and made me listen to this whole presentation, but it's very fascinating.
Can science cure death? It sure looks like it. Given the exponential advances in microprocessors and smartphones in his lifetime, he insists the biotech industry will figure out a solution by then. For this reason, Sarayev, like any number of young, optimistic, tech-associated men, believes that if he takes the correct preventative steps now, he might well live forever.
So what I'm going to do now is talk about what's transpired since last year's RAADfest. It's quite a bit, by the way, and the billionaires continue to put big money into age reversal research. And they're not doing it just to make money. They don't want to die. And this is what's really fascinating. And the continuing publication of research in which old plasma proteins are removed and it rejuvenates neurological function. It's consistent. This was published in November 2020 in Gero's Science. And this is something people are doing now. They're using apheresis as a way to remove plasma proteins to enable their brains to hopefully become more efficient. Tel Aviv University, November 2020, released the findings of a remarkable study in which they were able to use a very unique hyperbaric oxygen treatment to reverse aging. And the study was published in a journal, Aging, and it generated a lot of publicity. It talked about humans have found a way to reverse aging. This is fascinating, of course, and what they were able to do is use a unique hyperbaric protocol to elongate telomeres 20%, remove some senescent immune cells, improve some immune markers. And the media proclaiming for the first time aging has been reversed, which is not really true. Greg Fahey demonstrated age reversal 2 years ago. That was announced at RAADfest, by the way. But nonetheless, the media really is picking up on this information, and it's great because it stimulates other people to figure out better ways to reverse aging. And what was interesting about this study is that the trial participants, they saw their telomeres elongate to where they had been 25 years earlier. This is really remarkable. And where you can get this therapy? Well, it's available in North Central Florida at the Aviv Clinic. It's the first one of its kind to offer this technology in the United States. And when we sent our news correspondent up there to see it, wow, the pictures that came back, this looks like something out of a science fiction movie. What I'm going to do now is play a video so you can hear and see exactly what goes on inside these chambers.
The clients come into the hyperbaric. We close the doors and increase the pressure to 2 atmospheres. And the clients will fluctuate wearing a mask, breathing in 100% oxygen for 20 minutes. Then they'll remove the mask for 5 minutes, and then they fluctuate that 20 on, 5 off for the 2-hour session. During the hyperbaric, we have these tablets here, and our neurocognitive team develop training programs around what we've seen in each client's cognitive ability.
So they're not actually watching television. What they're doing is part of the process, actually.
Correct. They're not watching Netflix or listening to music the whole time. We want to actively stimulate the areas of the brain that have shown decline or have shown deficits.
So the cost to go to the Aviv clinics, a lot of money, $45,000. And for some people, it's a lot of time. This is a 3-month program, 5 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day, where you undergo the hyperbaric chamber in a very comfortable position. You breathe in pure oxygen, and you also get cognitive training assessments. So for those who have the time and the money, this looks interesting. Another way, if you can't travel to the Aviv clinics, is you can go to a local hyperbaric chamber, and we priced it around. And to go in there 5 days a week for 3 straight months and breathe in some pure oxygen, it'll cost you about $18,000. It doesn't give you everything they have to offer, but at least it's more affordable, and you can do this where you live, wherever there are hyperbaric chambers available. But what we did is we interviewed the doctor overseeing this technology. That's me on a Zoom broadcast about a month and a half ago, and the doctor had some profound information to disclose. This, again, is pre-publication data, but they've done a new study where they've used a multi-pronged approach, including intermittent fasting, to achieve average telomere elongation of 40%. I'm going to play a brief replay, a broadcast of what this doctor told us, which we broadcast, by the way, on local TV on a program that we have in South Florida. So listen to what this doctor says. It's just absolutely fascinating.
What we have over here, we have better results than the results we had in the clinical study. We have here prolongation of telomeres with an average of 40%, which is double the size that we had in the clinical study. Why? because we are adding other intervention freely to the hyperbaric. Then the effect is synergistically.
So what he just told you corroborates what we've been talking about at RAADfest since the inception. And that is, you have to optimize the fundamentals of good health. That's level one, before you move into experimental age reversal interventions. Because if you are fundamentally unhealthy to begin with, it may negate any benefits that we can enable you to obtain by experimenting with all kinds of therapies. So please stay healthy or get healthy today. Stay alive long enough until the time, well, when drugs like this become available. I'm again going in chronological order from last year's RAADfest, just a couple months after RAADfest. One drug used just a few times was able to restore cognitive function in aged mice. It was able to restore memory, it was able to prevent hearing loss, improve immune function. This is one drug, just a few doses, doing some miraculous work in these old mice. It's probably in the approval process now, which could take years, which is why we have to stay healthy now, waiting for these drugs to become available to save our life. And again, transcription factors. David Sinclair at Harvard did a fascinating study where they damaged the optic nerve traumatically, and they caused the mice to lose vision. And then they used just 3 transcription factors to regenerate the axons in the optic nerve to restore vision. So this is an in vivo, meaning in an inanimal model of using transcription factors to repair something that enabled the mice to see again, restoring vision using transcription factors to repair the axons, which make up the optic nerve connecting our eye to our brain. Fascinating research. So the end of 2020, Fortune's annual investor's guide. This is read by the titans of industry, big pharma, investors, philanthropists. This is what they look at. And what it talked about is the most exciting opportunity to improve the health of the world is to understand the biology of aging. They talked about what you've learned at RAADfest over the last couple of years about various age reversal interventions. And they talked about that if we fail to develop treatments to reverse biological aging, we're in for a healthcare cost tsunami. We're talking about Medicare and private insurance losing the money, going bankrupt, if we don't figure out a way to reverse aging in people today. And they talked about the need to launch an Operation Warp Speed against biological aging. This is fantastic. I was talking there about metformin, Depronyl, so many medications that used to be available first in Europe. That's not so much the case right now. A lot of new drugs become available in the U.S. first. But this study we reported on last year at RAADfest, and it talked about modulating just 2 signaling pathways and extending the C. elegans model of aging to the human equivalent of 400 to 500 years. Now, this generated a firestorm of beneficial publicity. It ignited a lot of interest in the research community, and all they did was modulate the insulin signaling and mTOR pathway in such a way to enable these C. elegans models to live the human equivalent of over 400 years. And this is the type of media coverage that generates the kind of interest that people want to see as it relates to where they're going to put their money. So the great news is we already have access to a lot of the technology that's working in the animal models. We can boost the AMPK. We can suppress excess mTOR. We can, well, of course, restore NAD, remove senescent cells. We've got the ability to do a lot of this on our own. It's not going to work as well as it did in the C. elegans model, but at least we can decelerate some of the pathological aging processes until CRISPR comes around to rescue us. So January 7th, 2021, Wall Street Journal reports on the study in which progeroid mice, they got a simple CRISPR gene editing treatment, and they lived more than twice as long. And this study, if extrapolated on an optimistic basis to humans using combination CRISPR treatment, it could mean that this could enable people to live to be 160 years of age. It's really incredible. Now, a second study actually published the same day, January 6th, both those studies were published January 6th, showed that targeting just one gene using CRISPR. This is the KAT7 CAT gene. It's a significant driver of cell senescence. Just by targeting that with CRISPR, it extended lifespan in normal age mice, which is more significant to us than progeroid mice, extended lifespan 25%. It improved overall appearance and grip strength. And it's important to understand that mice and humans share about the same set of genes, though in different forms. And what that means is if this CRISPR therapy works as well in people as it did in normal age mice, we might be looking at 98-year average lifespans as opposed to the rather pathetic 77 years we're currently stuck with. So CRISPR is demonstrating continuous benefits as was predicted, and the media is reporting on this, getting worldwide coverage, which generates worldwide interest in funding and supporting different research projects. Now, the Financial Times, like the Wall Street Journal of the World, published out of London, and they talked about COVID being a disease of aging because, well, older people get it, die more often. And they talked about, though, anti-aging therapies that could prove as important in the 21st century as antibiotics were in the 20th. And if that's the case, if in this century antibiotic type advances in the anti-aging field are developed, wow, we're in for incredible healthy longevity, incredible. And they mentioned that the pandemic, COVID, has left people frightened about getting old. That's good news. It means people are going to put money into it. WebMD is a rather conservative website. They talk about conventional medicine quite a bit, but they don't treat alternative medicine very well. I was shocked. February 2021, they talked about what we're doing to reverse engineer our biological clock and what our goal is. We don't merely want to eliminate disease. We're seeking to prevent death itself. And they brought out some examples, the immortal jellyfish and lobsters that seemingly live forever because they secrete this youthful enzyme. And this chart that appeared on the WebMD website is predicting by around the year 2065 that people may be living to around 1,000 years of age. And again, I emphasize, this is WebMD projecting that based on what's happening now and what we anticipate happening very soon, people are going to live a lot longer. This is almost independent validation of everything RAADfest has stood for since our inception. Wall Street Journal gave some really nice coverage to CRISPR in February about how it's going to defeat viruses and genetic diseases, enable people to live a long time. But then they criticized the fact that we may start making children smarter. And George Church gave a nice rebuttal, and I'll paraphrase that. And he said something to the effect, well, who doesn't want smarter kids? And who would want a child who has learning disabilities, depression, other mental health issues? If CRISPR can prevent this from the beginning and make kids smarter, well, that's a fantastic technology, and it should be expanded on. So here we now have CRISPR being validated as effective and people raising moral questions. So CRISPR, clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats. This is our ticket to potential biological immortality. And this is the study that I talked about in the Wall Street Journal in January, in which they used a simple gene editing technique to more than double the lifespan of CRISPR-treated mice. The unedited mouse on the left, it looks old, 7.5 months old, and it's about to die. The ones on the right are CRISPR-edited mice. They behaved young at 11 months. They were running around a cage. They looked healthy. They weren't even appearing to be normal aged or progeroid aged, I should say, even though they were progeroid mice. And they get to live about 17 months, more than 2.5 times. And this wasn't complicated. All they did is they inserted a DNA base editor into an inactivated virus, and they switched the toxic progeroid genes, that's T and A red at the bottom, with some healthy C and G genes. And by doing this, they were able to achieve this remarkable benefit. But just to reiterate, they took a DNA base editor, put it into an activated virus, and then infected the progeroid mice with that virus. And the genes, the A and T, which are the progeroid genes, were replaced by the beneficial G and C blue genes. And this enabled the CRISPR-treated mice to live about 510 days compared to the unedited group of only 215 days. And again, an optimistic extrapolation, if we can do this in people, well, we're looking at about 160 years of life as opposed to the 80 years we're supposed to live now. The great news is George Church has already done it. A single dose of combination gene therapy yielded all of these benefits. And it's generated lots and lots of media coverage for George Church. I've shown these before at RAADfest. He's gotten incredible publicity, just absolutely incredible publicity. And other research into CRISPR is showing, well, if you modulate your genes, edit your genes, you can probably discard a lot of the medications you're taking because it'll keep your lipids and other pathological factors under control without having to take a bunch of pills. This is really incredible. The New York Times in March did a nice book review about two scientists who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020 for their CRISPR-Cas9 research in engineering humans to better resist disease. This is getting national and international recognition that we are transcending towards radically extended healthy human lifespans. Now, we know about Dr. Barzilai. He is spearheading the metformin clinical trial at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine. That's been reported on quite a bit. He made a really surprising announcement in April 2021 that he expects very soon for $1 billion a year to become available to stop aging. This is mainly, he thinks, Mideast money in which they recognize writing $1 billion check is going to do nothing. It's got to be $1 billion every year until aging itself is cured. This is incredible news. In other words, the work we're doing to get the publicity and get the scientific community together and people start reading about the fact that we might be able to cure aging, they're starting to consider putting serious money into this happening. So the metformin study, it was approved in 2015. Nobody ever thought we'd get any funding. And the good news is, in March of 2021, a second metformin study was approved to treat frailty. This is based in San Antonio, by the way. Albert Einstein School of Medicine's in New York City. And, well, a third trial on metformin, on taking the metformin plus healthy eating and exercise to see if it can also reduce frailty, improve markers of senescence in older people. So what was first challenged is whether or not the FDA would ever approve a study on a drug to deal with aging. Not only did they approve the first metformin study, they approved two more. 3 metformin studies going on right now to see if it can slow or reverse biological aging. And well, we already know it can help because Greg Fahey reported in 2019 at RAADfest, you combine metformin with DHEA and growth hormone for a year, you get to reverse aging, 2.5 biological years. Fantastic. This generated international media coverage. And it's one of the reasons why money is starting to come out of the pockets of wealthy people because they want to see their aging process go in reverse. The problem is the delays. Metformin was approved in England in 1958. It took 20 years for someone to put together a study to get the FDA to approve it to treat aging. And no one thought it would get any money, but it did in 2019, $75 million. Including $40 million from an anonymous donor. So that is way too much time for something to be discovered before it's tested in people. And this is the major impediment to us advancing the science into the clinical arena. Bureaucratic delays. We've got to break down these barriers so that we can gain immediate access to any therapy that can potentially reverse our aging process. So again, moving forward chronologically from last year's RAADfest, a potential shortcut until CRISPR is perfected, a way of highly specifically altering DNA methylation patterns to turn on those beneficial genes and silence the ones that cause us to prematurely age. They call this CRISPR-2, and while it's not exactly CRISPR, it's a way of using DNA methylation to activate those beneficial pro-youth genes and turn off the ones that are causing us to degenerate and age prematurely. Now here's an individual who I have a lot of respect for, Michael Grieve. He's putting in some big money to study a broad spectrum of therapies that could enable us to reverse aging in people today. Congratulations, Michael Grieve, for doing this. Rapamycin, we've talked about this for years at RAADfest, and a study came out in April showing it can help with Alzheimer's, at least if you're a mouse. We think rapamycin can help with a broad range of diseases. And the great news is a study that I announced last year, they had everything in place to do the study, but they had no money. And by virtue of me announcing it, some other publicity, they've raised $485,000. This is spectacular, and it's going to enable them to enroll study subjects at a low cost of only $360. I'm going to talk more about this study tomorrow at the clinical trials presentation that I'm doing. But the good news is the rapamycin study has gotten funding and people can participate at a very low cost. Senolytics, well, these are beneficial for every part of our body. But if we're suffering any type of kidney dysfunction, especially early stage renal failure, maybe senolytic treatment could get rid of the senescent cells in the kidneys and improve your kidney function. Anyone suffering from a kidney disorder should consider some experimental senolytic treatments that are being made available around the country. And great news as it relates to senolysis, the removal of senescent cells. The Buck Institute announced in June that they have been able to precisely measure the destruction of senescent cells in response to different senolytic combinations. And the USDA is funding research right now at Tufts University to make this measuring technology available to people, measuring the ability of senolytic drugs and nutrients to destroy senescent cells. We're partnering with the people at Tufts, our age reversal network, to assist in getting humans into clinical trials where we give them different senolytic drugs and nutrients and see how well we can measure the senolytic benefit of those nutrients, drugs, and other compounds. This is really breakthrough news that we're seeing. SIR2 overexpression, it's been shown to extend life in mice way back in 2012. 2021, study confirms that. Median lifespan extended along with maximum lifespan by boosting a SIR2 protein in our cells. So how can we do that now? Well, eat well. Olive oil, fasting, healthy vegetables that contain high levels of cyanidins, these all help raise the SIR2 protein in our cells, and we already know they're good for us anyway. So healthy diet can help us derive the kind of benefits shown in this study. So amyloidosis, this is a protein misfolding disorder. There's a number of different types. This particular one I'm going to talk about is transthyretin amyloidosis, where lots of misfolded transthyretin proteins are circulated through the body. They destroy the heart, our digestive tract, our liver. It's a horrible, horrible disease. And guess what? CRISPR, for the first time in a human trial, was shown to reduce serum levels of this destructive transthyretin misfolded protein by 87%. This is the first time in vivo, whole human research using CRISPR has been able to treat a very serious disorder. It opens up the floodgates to using CRISPR to treat a whole lot of other genetic-related diseases. In the U.S. military, they're testing NAD precursors to see if it can enhance performance and endurance level, the value of targeting aging. This was published just a couple months ago in Nature Aging. And it showed that if we can improve human life expectancy just 1 year, it's worth $38 trillion. If we can do it by 10 years, and we're looking to improve it a lot more than 10 years, $367 trillion to the U.S. economy. This solves the Medicare cost crisis and all the other unfunded liabilities this country is facing. And the great news is this kind of data has prompted at least a proposed federal budget, $6.5 billion. To study what they call gerosciences. They want to figure out a way to improve human life expectancy to save the federal government and private and public insurance companies a lot of money. This is all trending in the favor of what we've been advocating for decades at Life Extension and well since 2016 at RAADfest. Now, the GDF-11 being used by some people already, but I helped fund a company in 2016, and they partnered with Harvard to bring GDF-11 to humanity. 2018 they started. I gave them a $100,000, essentially a grant just to get them started, and I was impressed. In August 2021, they raised $20 million, with $20 million more when the first patient is dosed with GDF-11. They're looking to enhance stroke recovery, treat obesity, type 2 diabetes, intracranial hemorrhages using GDF-11. Think if you have this in your body already, maybe you can prevent a lot of these problems from happening. We can't wait till this research comes out and we see how well it works. Sergey Young, he's got this longevity vision fund that invests in all kind of promising technologies aimed at enabling people to live many hundreds of years. We love people who are looking to make money at enabling us to live longer. It's an incredible mission statement, and we compliment Sergey Young and many others for following through on this technology. This study came out just about a month ago, and it showed that if you give long-term senolytic treatment to mice, it prevents intravertebral disc degeneration. And this is what causes chronic back pain and disability in people not just old but middle age. But nonetheless, we're continuing to see the benefits of senolytics in treating a host of degenerative disorders that people suffer from. And September, wow, was I surprised. I'm checking out at Whole Foods and I see Prevention magazine. The cover talks about slowing down aging. And when I bought the magazine and opened it up, wow, everything we've been talking about at RAADfest, fasting, metformin, senolytics, everything was talked about favorably in prevention. And if you wonder why I'm so impressed, well, prevention, since their inception and our inception, we've kind of not agreed. And now they've come across to, well, agree with what we're doing and publish something that's extremely favorable. And I compliment them for doing this. We're garnering more and more mainstream people recognizing the technologies that we are pioneering have real-world applicability, and reversing aging, not a bad thing at all. So what we're doing is rewriting the rules of biology. 2006, this is what the Yamanaka factors were able to accomplish, and the Nobel Prize was awarded. They were able to reprogram old cells into young cells. In 2011, they were able to take cells from 100-year-old people and reprogram them back down into the induced pluripotent state. And we now are engaged in funding research that will attempt to do this in whole organisms, including people. And what has happened over the last, well, 15 years, the impossible has been transformed into biological reality. And we're conveying that message. We're getting the message out so people know that aging and death are not necessarily unavoidable. Biological rejuvenation is now something that's occurring in the laboratory model. We just need to translate that into human research, which again is why I funded this review of all the studies involving cellular reprogramming, and with emphasis on the 6 transcription factor cocktail that fully reversed the degenerative changes and fully regenerated old 100-year-old cells back into induced autologous pluripotent stem cells. We've already got the technology to do this in vitro in the laboratory dish. We've got some in vivo evidence. It's time to move that into the human arena. And guess who picked up on it? September 4th. What a nice Labor Day gift. Jeff Bezos is teaming with another billionaire to put big money into age reversal research. It seems like Jeff wants to live forever. That's what the media talks about. And his new company with another billionaire, they are going to pursue the cellular reprogramming that we proposed in the article we had published in February of 2021 as a way to revitalize entire people. They are going to spend almost limitless amounts of money, and they've recruited people like Steve Horvath and Dr. Yamanaka to put a team together of the most brilliant scientists, give them a blue sky budget, and figure out a way to reverse the aging process. The bottom line is we're succeeding in reaching the upper echelons of the investment community. People who make the impossible happen, they now are focusing in on age reversal research with the objective, live forever. It's absolutely incredible. The media reported on it. Cellular reprogramming. What we're focused on, we've got Jeff Bezos also doing it. And we don't care who succeeds. We just want someone to succeed in our lifetime so we can grow biologically younger. And again, this is our schematic of how we plan to use the ability to transform old cells into induced pluripotent stem cells that are autologous, meaning they can be transplanted right back into the bone marrow niche of older people to regenerate them in a continuous way. In other words, their bone marrow will naturally secrete huge amounts of hematopoietic and mesenchymal stem cells to regenerate them and potentially keep them alive for many, many decades longer than they normally would. So what's transpired since last year's RAADfest? Well, I think we're reaching the critical mass, that consensus in which people, I think, get it, that we are on the verge of reversing aging in people, and it's not that far away. And a lot of it has to do with published articles like I funded. It came out in February. It was funded by different charities that I am involved with, and the idea is let the world know that cellular reprogramming may hold the key to adding decades to our healthy human lifespan. This is an email from one of the scientists that I funded, and he talked about the fact that we've already rejuvenated old cells in human and animals, and there's 8 independent studies that show that different cell types from old humans can be rejuvenated by cell reprogramming. And all it's going to take is some time to achieve the same results in people. Just improve the technology in a way that old people can grow younger via the virtues of cellular programming using transcription factors. So how are we going to live long enough to make it into that incredible era, which may only be a few years away? Well, this is one way of doing it, intermittent fasting. And we know the major medical journals have published very favorable articles on the multiple benefits of intermittent fasting. Pretty much all the diseases that affect us with aging can be at least ameliorated, reduced in risk incident if we pay attention to how we eat. And this study came out right after RAADfest in Nature Research, and it's one of the more profound studies showing that we can just avoid eating from the time we wake up to the evening time, 14 to 15 hours, weight loss, blood pressure reduction, reduced risk of cancer, improved immune functions, maybe greater resistance to COVID. All of this simply by spacing out the time you eat by about 16 hours. In other words, about 16 hours, don't eat, and then eat during the 8-hour period, and you may become very healthy. Mediterranean diet, we sometimes forget that this results in a 25% lower risk of us dying. And a study came out in June 2021, 9.8 years of study time, that's a long time, 21,000 people. And people who eat the garbage food, fried foods, processed meats, their risk of death, 46% higher. Those who follow the Mediterranean diet, 26% lower risk of sudden cardiac death. So further validation that eating healthy can buy you lots and lots of time. And it's important to remind people about the foods to eat. This is a slide that kind of shows the foods you should focus in on as far as your normal diet. And this kind of tells you what to avoid. Do not eat these foods. They will accelerate aging. They will increase your risk of degenerative diseases. Again, healthy foods, the Mediterranean diet. Focus on these foods, please, and avoid the foods that cause our bodies to get old faster, literally through glycation, oxidative damage, all kinds of carcinogenic activities. Stay away from the garbage foods. Here's an individual. He's 57 years of age, multi-billionaire, and he dies of a heart attack. And I'm thinking, wow, did that really have to happen? Was he getting his blood tested every year to correct cardiovascular risk factors? Because you look what happened since 1969. And this is when heart attack death rates peaked in the United States, 1969. And it went from 520 per 100,000 people down to just 167 in 2014. That's 68% decline in heart attack death rates over 45 years. Now, we intend to do the same with age-related disease in general. We're going to cut it down. But you got to pay attention. You have to have blood tests. You have to pay attention to your overall health, or you're not going to benefit. You're going to die like that individual. And most of us who were born attending RAADfest, well, in 1960, the average age of people dying in the United States was under 70. Kind of frightening because we want to live a lot longer than 70, and yet there's a way that's been identified that can add about 4.7 years. And what happened in 2018, a study came out and it showed that people with an RBC, red blood cell score, that's a measure of long-term omega-3 status, just over 6.8% compared to those under 4.2%, Well, they had a lower risk of death. In other words, just this one measure alone reduces your risk of dying. Now, that was one study in 2018. June 2021, a more elaborate study. This went on with 2,000 people plus over an 11-year period. And again, if your omega-3 index is over 6.8%, and that's not hard to attain, by the way. You can do it with cold water fish. You don't even need supplements, but keep it over 6.8%, and you can then live about 4.7 additional years. If you don't get any other takeaways from this year's RAADfest, this one, have an omega-3 index test. If you're over 6.8%, you're in good shape. And if you're under, well, do something about it. But it's a reality. Very wealthy people with a lot of money, they're often very generous. They make lots of charitable contributions, but they don't focus in on aging. And they have all this money and they wind up dying when they don't have to. They could have lived a lot longer. And this is really an interesting individual. He helped push through a cure for hepatitis C. This is one of those few true medical breakthroughs where an incurable disease, hepatitis C, was cured with a drug, Sovaldi. And this individual apparently walked to work, and he thought that was probably very healthy to do. And on his way home, walking home, he took a fall and he died. And I don't think when he woke up that morning, he thought that he was going to die that day simply by taking a walk and falling. But what this is an example of the frailty that occurs with aging that many of us are not aware of. We think we are as agile and capable as we were a couple years ago, and we're not. If we're over 40 to 50, frailty is there. It's slowly creeping up on us. So I advocate people, be careful. Avoid falls. Don't take anything for granted. This individual, very successful, a lot of money, but he's dead because he took a fall. We don't want that to happen. And this is what I'm running into. More and more of our aging supporters are delaying intervening into their aging process. They're also delaying funding age reversal research. They reach a point where they're hanging by a thread. And then they come to me and they say, well, I'm ready for it. And I say, you're too frail. I'm afraid to do anything with you because you may die during the intervention. So don't wait till you're hanging by a thread to consider doing something about biological aging. So as it relates to transhumanist advances, New England Journal of Medicine reports in July that for the first time, they took a stroke paralyzed patient and they connected a transmitter to his brain in a way that he could transmit words from his brain directly onto a computer screen. Wow, a brain implant in a stroke paralyzed patient talking, not with his mouth, his brain talking to a computer and it translating what he's thinking into words. Our human brain cloud interface expert, Nuno Martins, was very favorable about this type of technology, validating what he's doing to eventually translate our consciousness, our entire being into the cloud if we want it. And Dr. Martins, he had a publication back in 2019 in the Frontiers of Neuroscience that described exactly how human brains are going to be connected to the internet in the next few decades. In other words, we're going to have a backup copy of ourselves in the internet. In the meantime, use our connection, our implant in our brain to talk to the internet, just like we use our cell phones now to get a lot of information immediately. And this published study that Dr. Martin put out, it got a lot of media coverage. The idea of merging our brain with the cloud is something that people are starting to recognize. And what was interesting is Dr. Martin's publication on the human brain cloud interface, it attracted more views than 90% of 67 other Frontiers in Science journals. There was so much interest in this from, well, guess what? Apple, Google, Microsoft, everybody thought this is the future. Once we establish human brain cloud interfaces, then we don't need cell phones anymore. We'll have an automatic connection to the cloud. And well, July 2021, that's been confirmed. Elon Musk, he's got a new startup, raises $205 million from Google and others to develop a Neuralink where high bandwidth brain implants will communicate directly with computers and phones. Total investment in the company, $363 million. this is going to happen, and it helps fulfill the prediction of Ray Kurzweil. He talked about if we can just live to year 2045, we are going to merge the neocortex of our brain into the cloud. We're going to merge with the computer and then engage in limitless self-improvement cycles. And the result is going to be super intelligence that advances our abilities to the incomprehensible level of immortality. This is Ray Kurzweil's exit plan to achieve immortality, and it's being validated with research and money putting into this technology. And then, well, 118 years later, we've got the rover landing on Mars. It wasn't the first time, but this rover had a helicopter on it. And this Wall Street Journal article kind of compared, well, here we were in 1903, man had never flown before, they prove it can work, and now we've got a rover all traveling around Mars with a helicopter that then flies around Mars and lands back on the rover and transmits data back on Earth. And by the way, we're controlling that all from Earth. This is robotic technology on Mars. So if you can see the analogies where until 1903, man had never flown. Once they show they can fly, then all kinds of expertise goes into developing technologies. So we go from 120 feet of Kitty Hawk to 140 million miles traveling to Mars. 2011, cells from a 100-year-old human were fully regenerated using transcription factors to reprogram the cells back into an embryonic stem cell phase where they can rejuvenate tissues throughout the body. 2022, we're looking to do large animal studies to see if we can use autologous induced pluripotent stem cells for systemic regeneration. Systemic regeneration. And I wasn't sure if I was going to show this slide, but I'm going to do it anyway. 1903, we fly. 2021, we're on Mars. Well, what if human lifespans could increase at the same rate as aviation and space travel? Well, the oldest living human died at age 122. Now, if we reach that escape velocity that Ray Kurzweil predicts, well, we could theoretically be living billions of years if the same numerical extrapolation is made. Just for the heck of it, I thought I'd throw that slide up there. This individual won't get the benefit because he's no longer around. And when you have a lot of money and you die, you no longer have any money. You don't have any legal ownership over it. It's now someone else's money. So if you have more money than what you need, I encourage you to donate money to organizations, charities that are doing work right now in an attempt to reverse your aging process, or invest in commercial companies. I don't care how you do it. Please spend some of your money before you wind up in this predicament. So this July, Apple talked about science curing death, and we know that that can stimulate other people to think, well, if they think they can do it, maybe I can do it better. Jeff Bezos is putting big money into technology that will probably enable humans to live a lot longer, including Jeff. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We're all giving you an applause here. And I know, thank you for that presentation. And this is the time for our questions and answers for Bill. And I have a question from our live stream that is separate from this Zoom. And those folks at the live stream are asking their questions in the chat box. Here's a question from Greg. He asks you, Bill, what do you think of the theory of blood viscosity causing poor circulation and increased thrombosis events? Is this being studied?
Well, it is. I mean, it's a normal process with aging. Over age 55, thrombosis is the leading cause of death, be it an ischemic stroke, coronary artery thrombosis, which includes blood flow to the heart. It's a huge, huge factor. And people who are taking the nutrients, low dose aspirin, eating healthy, you can dramatically reduce platelet aggregation, platelet adhesion, and reduce your thrombotic risk. So no question, major problem, but I'd like to think most people belonging to this group are already, if they don't already know it, reducing their risk of a thrombotic event occurring. It's an abnormal platelet aggregation, blocks occlusion to the heart, brain, kidneys, intestines, can occur anywhere, and it is major. But the good news is I think we're all reducing our risk of a thrombotic event occurring.
Thank you. It's amazing how far we have come, and yet there's such a long distance yet to go, isn't there? I think if we can all get behind you and get behind age reversal, we can accomplish this and reach longevity escape velocity. If anyone has a question, just put your hand in the air, or you can ask it and I'll call upon you. You can ask your question in person, or if you prefer to type it in the chat box, you can give us your question in the chat box and I'll read it for you. We have lots of compliments over here at the live stream for you, Bill. Lots of people that are happy for you to be here at this presentation.
No, I appreciate the compliments, and I hope people realize I do put a lot of effort into these presentations. Essentially, I'm reporting on mostly other people's research. I'm reporting on a little bit about what we're doing, and that takes a lot of investigation. I have independent people try to validate what's going on. We sent our correspondent up there to the Aviv clinics to see, is that real? Are they really doing these hyperbaric treatments? And yeah, it was more impressive than what we expected. So I do put a lot of work into these presentations, which is why sometimes when people say, why don't you come and present at my event, Bill, I say, well, I've already pretty much presented everything I know. I'm not going to, go back and create something out of nothing. So it's good to repeat some of these presentations as we did during the service. Because it really is rather up to date. There are a few more advances, but it's very much up to date as to where we are now.
We have a question from Bradley. Bradley, if you will unmute your microphone, you can ask your question on NAD+.
Fantastic. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Great, thank you. First, I'd like to commend both of you for the work that you've been doing. It's spectacular. Thank you so much for being the leaders in this field. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to be here. Mr. Faloon, a quick question, real quick. I was lucky enough to be involved in one of your NAD studies at your facility down here in Florida. And from what I knew of it, it was a double-blind study. Some of us were given nicotinamide riboside in a pill form. Some of it were sublingual. Some were giving different dosages. I was waiting to find out when that study might be published, because thank you for the information you've been providing me. I'm 57 years old. I run 6 miles a day without even thinking about it. I go to the gym every day. My vision's perfect. I've got, I'm in grad school at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine, keeping up with them. So thank you for all this stuff, and I've been implementing in my life. But I just remember when I was doing that study, or being one of the participants in it, I don't know what I was receiving. But honestly, by about day 2, I was talking to a friend. I felt like, I told him, I said, I feel like every cell in my body's come alive. Like I mentioned, I run 6 miles a day, go to the gym, but I just felt so much more energy and so much more, vitality that I would really love to know, when do you think that study might be available? Or
it's tremendous news that you got that kind of an improvement. It probably indicated you were very deficient in NAD, and whichever compound you received, you were able to increase the NAD inside your cells to improve energy, repair DNA, do all the nice things that NAD+ does. Whether or not we're going to publish that study or expand it with better testing and more options, we're looking into doing that. And unfortunately, we've had delays. COVID has kept scientists that we're hiring from Europe from even coming into the United States, equipment that we were going to use to improve the ability to look at NAD and its metabolites. We bought a brand new mass spec. We were trying to make a used one work. So we've had some delays, but rather than publish what were very interesting results, we'd rather expand that and provide what we would think is going to be more accurate data. So that's where we are right now with that. The good news is we're going to be able to evaluate people better in the very near future. Disappointing news is it's taken us this long to get that up off the ground.
Well, I can't thank both of you and also everyone that's attending. I thank you all very much. Thank you for this community. So thank you very much, and thank you for letting me ask this question.
Certainly.
Thank you. We have another question now from Natasha. Natasha, would you unmute your mic and please join us with your question?
Hi there. Sorry, forgive me. Okay. I just was thinking, and this is something that I have been thinking about prior to this meeting and preparing for it. But, when we have cultures that are promote their movements and have academic presence and presence in the scientific and technological community, as well as mainstream, it's really important that we have some kind of almost like jetpack. And I think the jetpack that Bill, my question for you is, could we have a jetpack vitamin that is like an H plus or a transhumanist vitamin that has the logo on it and is something that becomes so cool that everyone wants to take this basic formula vitamin? Now, I know that you have a multivitamin, and that's great, but could it be marketed as an essential vitamin for those of us who are in the extreme life extension community for super longevity, and especially transhumanists, because our community actually reaches into the many, many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And I say this also because I'm going to be the editor of a whole new book series for academics, universities worldwide, and it'd be great to cover this in that. Again, this will reach many thousands of people.
Well, in many ways, that was done back in 1983. There were several organizations. I think we led the pack in putting together kind of that jetpack based on 1983, 1984 technology. It did do very well. But what's happened is we're learning people need individualized dosing of a lot of different nutrients. And so a one-size-fits-all jetpack, so to speak, great concept, but realistically, when we're counseling people and looking at extensive blood test results, their clinical history, their blood pressure, et cetera, people need varying doses of varying nutrients. So there's not really a one-size-fits-all as it relates to aging people. Of course, they should all be engaged in the basics. And I think most of our participants are taking the basics, both medically, hormonally, but the concept is fantastic, and it actually worked quite well, 83, 84, all the way up into the 1990s. But then we started to realize we can't tell people take this because it's so fantastic, when in reality, they may need a different type of formula.
You're absolutely correct. And thank you for actually correcting me, because I'm someone who does support personalized medicine from the get-go. Although I do take a multiple vitamin every day, and every time I take it, and then I take my other, my hormone replacement therapy, my other additives for my own personal, based on my genetic makeup, et cetera. But I always wonder if that basic vitamin that I'm taking, which is your basic vitamin, what I need to add to it. But I like the idea of having that basic multivitamin, which is essential. And I always, every time I take it, I think I wish this was like a Bill Faloon or a transhumanist or a, extreme life extension or super longevity vitamin that we say is the starting point, is the basic that we all need, regardless of our diverse chemical and biological makeup that, needs to be more personalized.
Well, again, it truly is a tremendous concept if it could be done. But we do list, the top 5, 6 types of interventions that we feel are the most important. So we list that in various publications. But the reality is, I don't think such a formula exists that is practical. And for some people, if a formula has 14 to 16 capsule requirements, they're just afraid that they're never going to take that many. And yet they'll do individual hormones, drugs, nutrients, that they might take 30 or 40 of those, but they don't want to take a whole lot of units of a single one. So great concept. I think companies sometimes come out and make these claims, but the claims really are not based.
Oh, I love that. As a staunch BS detector, I love that you said that, and I noticed that our dear friend Aubrey is taking the stance as well, and he says that the scientific research in anti-aging is a bit clumsy today, but we know where we need to be headed. And in every talk I give, I always refer to the difference between evidence-based science and wishful or hopeful science. And I love that you said that, because that again gives you many kudos for looking at the crucial requirement of using our intelligence to determine what we actually really do need, and not to be swayed by marketing schemes or trade shows that are selling products that in fact, could be dangerous for us to use.
Well, just not as effective as it could be. And then we want to encourage people not to overlook any of the basics, because we've lost people. We've been doing this now for, well, professionally about 42 years. It's coming up on it. We've seen people who think they're doing it right, and yet they're omitting a lot, sometimes maybe overdoing something else. And we want people to, again, as you said, individualized dosing across the board, your dietary intake, physical activity. It's got to be done as an individual.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have a question now from our live stream. And in the live stream, Alan is asking, what's the single most important thing the average person can do now for their health? Do you have any advice?
At this point, intermittent fasting. The data is consistent. We get new studies every week or two validating it. I think about 80–90% of the published literature supports the health benefits. And every once in a while, you get an outlier study that just doesn't seem to result in what you anticipate. But for the most part, both mechanistically and clinically validated, if you can fast 16 to 18 hours most days, and there's different ways of doing it, you're doing your body a heck of a lot of many favors, including inducing autophagy, turning down excess mTOR, boosting AMPK. You're doing so many things simultaneous. You talk about that super longevity pack. Yeah, stop eating all day long, and you may derive more benefits than almost anything else you can do.
Yes, and on that point, on intermittent fasting, it's something we all can do. It's something everyone can do. You don't need something. You're actually getting rid of calories. You're getting rid of food. So consider doing intermittent fasting. I'm doing it, and you know, in the first month or month and a half, you may struggle with it, but ease yourself into it, and you'll be able to easily do an intermittent fasting schedule for yourself. So I concur, absolutely. That's
and just some green tea, white tea, black coffee. I mean, it doesn't have to be nothing, but there's ways you can do it to make it easy. And most people, after they get used to it, they feel better. They just feel better not always having to process food. Give your body a break.
That's right, you'll get more energy. Here's a question from Morris. Morris asks, can time-release niacin plus niacinamide emulate?
Niacinamide.
Thank you.
Right.
Can it emulate NAD plus?
It's hard to say. The data is heavily tilted towards the nicotinamide riboside. That's where most of the research has been conducted. Problem is, it costs a lot of money, and I regret that. It was developed at Dartmouth, and they licensed it to a public company, and well, they're looking to make lots and lots of money in doing that. But they do have the science backing them up at this point, showing that probably at this point is the best way of boosting cellular NAD plus levels. But that's always subject to change. There's always people trying to do it better, which we appreciate. And when there is a better way, we try to let the world know about it. But at this point, the preponderance of the evidence leans towards the nicotinamide riboside.
Thank you. Here's a question we have from Penny. And Penny asks, how do we utilize some of the strategies that you're recommending? For example, stem cell treatments for joint bone tissues. Do you have any?
Well, what people are doing is seeking to derive the exosomes that are secreted from stem cells to rejuvenate cellular function in our joints. There are different ways to do that. Some people using young plasma, some people using exosomes derived from placental tissues, perinatal tissues. Regenerating cartilage, though, one of the most effective ways is to go onto a senolytic protocol to get rid of the senescent cells in the joint lining, because until you get rid of those senescent cells, well, you're going to have them spewing out protein degrading enzymes, pro-inflammatory factors. And we know people spend a lot of money undergoing stem cell treatments directly into an affected joint, works for a while, and then the pain returns. And well, if they didn't get rid of the senescent cells, all that expensive good stem cell material you put into an inflamed joint, it's going to get destroyed by the senescent cells. So senolytic therapy by itself has been shown in some of our limited clinical trials to be very effective against osteoarthritis. And so if you want to do both, senolytics first, and then move into something more expensive that progressive doctors are offering nowadays.
Yes, someone was commenting here on intermittent fasting, and it's important to say that when you're intermittent fasting, just as you said a moment ago, Bill, this doesn't mean not taking anything in your mouth. You can drink water, and you should stay hydrated. Drinking teas, what you're doing is not getting calories. So consider that. Mira, would you like to ask that question? Let me ask.
Sure I can. Yeah, because I make my own kefir. So I hydrate with water every morning. And then I finally have my kefir. And then usually by between 3 or 5 o'clock, then maybe I have my first meal. So as far as gut health goes, what are your thoughts on fermented foods, pickled foods, or what other things do you recommend from a gut health perspective that impact health and wellness in your mind the most?
As it relates to dietary ingestion, a lot of data out there about avoiding gluten, a lot of data out there about different types of foods, but I think they impact people differently. And so often people get food sensitivity tests that may or may not be effective as it relates to gut health. But it's a good question. I don't actually know the answer as to which food group is going to give you the best microbiome, but there is a lot of data. I've read many studies, some arguing one direction, others talking in the direction.
I have a question now from Brent. Question, Bill, do multivitamins help anti-aging?
We know that you need vitamins to induce life-sustaining enzymatic reactions in your body and to get all of the nutrients you need, especially if you're practicing calorie restriction, which happens sometimes with intermittent fasting. I mean, I personally eat a lot less in addition to intermittently fast, because when it's time to eat, I don't need a lot of food to be satiated. So I think for people who are doing almost everything right, they're really trying not to eat too much, the nutrients can help at least avoid a vitamin D deficiency, a vitamin K deficiency, a magnesium deficiency. And we're talking to people in the calorie restriction groups, and we're kind of letting them know it's great you're reducing your calorie intake, but if you're not getting enough vitamin K, you may be inducing premature vascular calcification. If you're not getting enough vitamin D, and even if you eat a lot of food, normally there's not enough vitamin D in that food to give you what you optimally need. So I think for many people, they absolutely need to take at least the basics so that they don't have to worry about being deficient in something that could very well be that one problem that causes a premature illness, such as hyperhomocysteine. All it takes typically are B vitamins, and you lower homocysteine. But if you're not getting those B vitamins and you've got a methylation deficit, here all that good work you're doing with restricting your calorie intake is being unfortunately blocked by your deficiency. So that's my overall view on that.
Right. We have a question here from the stream from Ronald. He's asking about NR again. With NR, is it recommended to take TMG? And is TMG anti-aging functional by itself?
Hard to say. Trimethylglycine is going to improve methylation patterns, and in doing that, it could help to lower homocysteine. And for many years, that's what we talked a lot about. TMG as being a good way to enhance methylation in a way that you can reduce homocysteine, but it involves taking a lot of different supplements. And the 5-MT methyl tetrahydrofolate form of folic acid, methylcobalamin form of B12, B6. We think that the B vitamins are a more efficient way of promoting healthy methylation and reducing homocysteine. And my view anyway is I'd rather take these enzymatically activated B vitamins as opposed to taking a lot of TMG pills. But it's optional, and maybe looking at your homocysteine levels, comparing what you do with each one. Maybe for some people TMG works better, and for others it could very well be the nutrients, the vitamins, B vitamins.
We have a question from Deepak. Deepak, let me ask for you. How to know which therapy option is the best fit? HRT therapy or NAD+? and so on. Seems like they address similar issues. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think so. Hormone replacement therapy is a great approach in of itself. It's one of those foundational approaches, that level one in the House of Optimal Health that I show so often, achieving youthful hormone balance, very important. But that does not affect NAD in a meaningful way. As you age, your NAD levels are going to decline, even in people who take lots and lots of hormones, be it DHEA, pregnenolone, replace their testosterone, their female sex hormones. They can do all of that. Their NAD levels still go down. So they're really two different mechanisms that you're looking at in order to sustain more youthful health.
Right. One last question from our live stream, I believe, and this is from Greg. What do you think of AKG?
AKG, I've heard of it, alpha ketoglutarate, I believe, is what he's referring to as far as that acronym. And, you know, there's really good data on it, but our internal experts have looked at it and felt the potency that you might need to derive the benefit you're looking for might be difficult for people to do every day. And there were some other issues that caused us to think great animal data and also some human data too, but it wasn't something that we were going to prioritize. We kind of put it on the back burner until we see more data to substantiate it. Nothing wrong with it, by the way. It's just a matter of how much can you ingest, how much can you afford to ingest, and we didn't put that one at the front of the pack. So that's for that alpha ketoglutarate may be fantastic, but not proven enough to us yet.
Okay, we have Alma would like to ask a question. Alma, please unmute your microphone and join us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had to take the background off of my camera. I couldn't see myself, so I couldn't tell. This has been extremely informative. And part of the reason why I decided to ask a question is because I know that, Mr. Faloon, that you're in the Boca area. And I myself, and I do intermittent fasting. 6 years ago, I had a severe stroke. I had a hemorrhage near my cerebellum. Sorry, he lives here with me and he's barking at something. But it has affected my whole left side of my body where I had the stroke. Now, because of that, it's limited my movement. And of course, I've put on weight. So my question has to do with the area, because I always understood, I'm interested in stem cell treatments. That's what I'm interested in. Do you do that at your facility?
No, we don't do any type of medical treatments. What we do is investigate what others are doing and seek to validate what works and what does not work. And that's challenging because a lot of people won't do baseline tests and follow-up tests to let us get that independent validation. But you had a hemorrhagic stroke. Thank goodness you were able to survive it. A lot of people don't. And right now you've got some unfortunately paralyzing brain damage. And what we need to do, of course, is initiate some regenerative therapies in you. And I hope over the next year or two, we'll be able to uncover some of what is working as opposed to what doesn't, and to what degree it works in certain situations. I don't have a direct solution, by the way, for that problem. It is serious. Was this caused by hypertension or just some blood vessel?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm still taking high blood pressure medication for that.
Right, and he had the high blood pressure, I assume, for a while, which is a big problem. I've given so many lectures on it. I've lost some very close people to blood pressure where they just wouldn't take the pill. I don't know why. Take a pill to lower their blood pressure.
That was me.
I know. I still don't understand. I have an at-home blood pressure monitor. I do myself 2 or 3 times a day. I take enough blood pressure meds to push it down to 105, 100. I just won't let it stay high. But anyway, yeah, we can't go back in time to reverse that. Stay tuned to what we're doing because we are looking at anything that might help reverse the paralyzing effects of both ischemic and hemorrhagic strokes. They're so prevalent out there. And it's actually part of aging too. As we get older, we kind of go into a semi-paralyzed state with different parts of our body. We need to regenerate. And that is really the focus of almost everything we do, regenerative medicine.
Well, thank you so much. I have learned so much tonight about health. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alma. I have a question from our live stream, and this is from Ronald. Is there a study of using some oxygen concentrators at normal room hyperbaric pressure versus pressurized chambers with its complexities?
Most of the data looks at very high concentrated hyperbaric, like 2 atmospheres. That's what they did with the group up at Aviv. And you can't get that with an at-home hyperbaric. As far as studies with oxygenators in your room, there probably has been some studies. Some people literally breathe pure oxygen, not all day, but throughout the day in order to hyperoxygenate the brain. And theoretically, that could have some regenerative effects. So there is some data out there. There was a time when I had a big oxygen tank next to my computer, and I would try to breathe it in a few hours a day, and I just found it cumbersome. Not sure I got any benefit from it. But there's a lot to be said about high oxygen. A lot of benefits that we're finding out right now, including potential telomere elongation. But I don't recall a specific study, but I do recall people talking about studies, so they're probably out there.
Thank you. So this concludes our question and answer for this event. Fantastic presentation, wonderful information, great stuff there. We're going to, after this event, we'll go into a Zoom party, and anyone who's in the live stream that would like to join us in the Zoom, you can register and jump in with us as well. And Bill, I hope you can stay with us for a few minutes afterwards, chat with some of our folks. And I'd like to let you know that this event has been recorded. It's all going to be available after we close, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. And there's a link at the top of our website if you'd like to go into the YouTube channel to get to this event, the recording of it. Remind you also, next month, we have 2 events next month. We have our Remembrance of the Resurrectables, and that will be Thursday, December the 16th. And then the following Saturday, we will be joining the Super Longevity Holiday Party worldwide through a node here at the church. And both events will start at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 10 p.m. Universal Time. And we look forward to seeing you all next month. If any of you have any questions, you want to shoot me an email, you can connect with me through the website. Thanks for coming tonight, and we'll see.
Stay well, be safe.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
Fantastic.